Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss Robert Jenrick's latest lies about the European Convention on Human Rights. This time he says that the Good Friday Agreement, more officially known as the Belfast Agreement by the UK government, is not reliant on the ECHR. Yes, it is. And anyone who can make it to page 7 of the treaty or who knows how to do PDF search will see this. But first, for daily political commentary, please click the subscribe button so you don't miss out. So, it's really incredible to think that the Conservative MPs have manufactured a situation whereby Kemi Badenoch looks the same choice to be the next leader. How on earth did they end up there? And the reason I say this is Jenrick is ploughing ahead with his platform policy of pulling us away from the European Convention on Human Rights. It's an incredibly dangerous policy, more so than Brexit, I would argue. In fact, ever since the far right started talking about leaving, I have regarded it as second Brexit and all part of their plan. The Rwanda scheme was never designed to circumvent our asylum responsibilities. That's what it sounds like. Oh, we'll just send them all to Rwanda so that we don't have to accept any asylum seekers. No. Despite the hype, the number of people claiming asylum in the UK is very small by European standards, never mind by the standards of stable countries bordering the hellholes from which refugees inevitably come. It was set up from the very start as an asylum policy designed to fail, in order to argue that international human rights laws were preventing us protecting our borders. And if this policy takes hold in the public's imagination, I fear there will be little to stop it. Don't waste your time saying, well, these are our human rights as well. Won't work. The populists behind the move will argue that they only have a beef with what they call a foreign court deciding. Don't waste your time trying to explain that the European Court of Human Rights isn't foreign either. Won't work. They'll say, well, we already have these domestic rights in law, these human rights in domestic law rather, and it should just be British courts who decide them, even though it was a British court that decided that the Rwanda plan was illegal, for example, but they, no, it's the European Court of Human Rights. No, it was the Supreme Court just opposite the road from Parliament. But anyway, that's what they'll say. They'll say, no, we've already got the same laws in domestic law. We just don't want the international court mucking about. Then when they've got people convinced to vote ourselves out of it, oh, yeah, the laws will still be there. We'll still have the same human rights. It'll just be a British court. Yeah, that's fine. They will then remove those domestic human rights laws as well, and we'll be defenceless. It'll be just like Brexit. Remember Brexit? Vote to leave the EU, and of course we're going to remain in the single market. I mean, who would do something stupid like leave the single market? The second people voted to leave the EU, took no time at all for the red lines to be set up whereby, oh, of course we've got to leave the single market. I mean, for goodness sake. Don't imagine the public will be wise to these lies now because they've already been used on them once. They really won't. They won't. And remember, one of these human rights laws is the right to free and fair elections. Once that's gone, we'll be going the same direction as America will be if they vote Trump in again. So what really needs to happen to head this off is to point out that every claim made against the European Convention of Human Rights or the European Court of Human Rights by people like Robert Jenrick are lies. Should be quite easy because they're fairly easy to debunk. Robert Jenrick's been on Laura Kunzberg today to make the ridiculous claim that the Good Friday Agreement doesn't rely on the ECHR. You what, mate? It famously does. Mentioned multiple times in the treaty, and one of the big mentions is this, quote, there will be safeguards to ensure that all sections of the community can participate and work together successfully in the operation of these institutions, and that all sections of the community are protected, including arrangements to provide that key decisions and legislation are proofed to ensure they do not infringe the ECHR and any Bill of Rights for Northern Ireland. So the Good Friday Agreement not only relies on the ECHR, it's built around it. Our hard Brexit, that caused enough friction in Northern Ireland because the treaty was built on the basis of the sort of easy free movement we already had as fellow members of the EU. Even with a treaty specifically addressing this, the Northern Ireland Protocol with the Windsor Framework bolt-on, there's still a lot of friction. But the Good Friday Agreement could still operate with one country outside the EU because it wasn't an integral part of the treaty. It was just an assumption, right? The European Convention on Human Rights is integral. And the final arbiter of the European Convention on Human Rights is the European Court of Human Rights. Nothing will change that. So Robert Jenrick is yet again lying. And here's the point I will always make in this situation. A politician who genuinely believes that a policy is best for the country doesn't have to lie like this. Yes, we know there will have to be a bit economical with the truth in order to avoid dividing voters at times, because the vote, you know, if you're talking about something very complex, voters want simple, and they'll vote for the person who offers them the simple answer. But you do not claim things that are objectively untrue and easily debunked, if you really believe in it. All Robert Jenrick, if he really believed in it, would have to say is something that he genuinely did discover as immigration minister, without lying. You know, all someone has to do is look at a copy, look up the Belfast Agreement, and Jenrick's lies are exposed. And when Jenrick says that the Good Friday Agreement doesn't rely on the ECHR, he said that, oh no, what it does is it envisages a Northern Ireland Bill of Rights. No, it gives provision for such a thing existing, but it's additional, and it's made clear it's additional. Again, I'll quote that bit. They do not infringe the ECHR and any Bill of Rights for Northern Ireland, and not or. Doesn't say, oh, if you develop a Northern Ireland Bill of Rights, that will just replace it. No, and. And he knows he's lying. He says that he would introduce a Bill of Rights which does what the spirit of the ECHR does, he says. Well, this is bollocks. You can't change an international treaty by introducing something domestically which you claim keeps within the spirit of that treaty. If we could do that, Boris Johnson would have arranged a Brexit deal that got us, as he claimed, all the benefits of Brexit with none of the downsides, and the EU won't be able to do anything about it because we would say, well, we've just changed the treaty so it's in the spirit of the thing. You can't just do that unilaterally. That is nonsense. Treaties are clear, and when you make changes to them, there has to be agreement upon all parties of the treaty. You can't unilaterally change it without breaching the agreement. Laura Kunsberg was, of course, utterly hopeless at taking him to task over this, but we could have predicted that without a crystal ball. And part of me looks at this situation and I think it would actually be harder than Brexit for them to actually take us out the ECHR. Because dropping the ECHR would actually be a breach of the Good Friday Agreement. Doesn't matter what Jenrick or anyone else says. It would be, as a matter of law. It's a treaty, right? Every court that has anything to do with it will confirm, yes, this is a breach of the treaty. And the United States and the EU will impose diplomatic and economic sanctions for doing so, because it's a very big deal for both of them. Obviously, it's a massive deal for Ireland, and Ireland's an EU member. It's a massive deal for the United States as well. Even Trump, like you might think, oh, well, Trump's just is basically an anarchist, so he'll just let us do whatever we want as long as we say how great Trump is. Now, even when Trump was president, he made it clear to Boris Johnson he would not tolerate a breach of the Good Friday Agreement. Strange to think that even MAGA thinks that the UK leaving the ECHR would be too crazy even for them. It's like, can you imagine the situation? That Shaman fella going, what, you want to leave the ECHR? You mental, mate? So we actually have better safeguards against leaving the ECHR than we did leaving the EU. But, because you may imagine, because I would imagine to myself, look, the threat of America and the EU being ready to impose massive economic sanctions against us doing this would be enough to stop even the Conservatives going ahead with it. But there's danger in the idea taking hold, because if they win power on the back of this policy, they're sort of trapped, they have to do it. And we already know that the Conservatives are capable of electing leaders who will do anything for power, including taking us on a collision course with both the EU and the United States. They will claim they have a magical way of making everything work, that they will deliver all of the benefits promised. There'll be none of the downsides. All the downsides are just Project Fear, remember that. And here's the thing, and we know that they would do this because they already are. They're already, I mean, although Kemi Badenoch is probably the favourite for this contest, they could easily elect Robert Jenrick. And do you know what? There are multiple senior Tories who who are not in favour of leaving the ECHR, including Kemi Badenoch, who are not pointing these things out. They're not pointing out that we cannot leave it because it would be a breach of the Good Friday Agreement. The United States and the EU would impose massive sanctions against us. They're not saying that. Why aren't they saying that? They know we shouldn't leave. They don't want their party to adopt this policy. Why are they not coming out with these arguments? It's because when it comes to it, they will accept it if they have to. In order to win elections, they will accept it. Because if they won't accept it, if it's a red line for them, they would be making much stronger arguments. They would be persuading their own party members, no, you need to think about this. So, you know, I can just see it happening again. So this needs shutting down very, very quickly. Not with moral arguments, they don't work, right? But by exposing the lies. The European Court of Human Rights does not do what the likes of Jenrick claim. They do not order the release of terrorists at all, ever, never have. And the European Convention on Human Rights absolutely underpins the Good Friday Agreement. And if we breach that, and Jenrick is proposing that we do breach it, he's just denying it's a breach, but it's not up to him to decide what is a breach or not, the response from the EU and the United States will be unequivocal and fairly harsh, and even MAGA Republicans will be fully on board with that. A lot of far-right nutters in this country don't seem to realise how important the Good Friday Agreement is to both Democrats and Republicans. It's like one of the dwindling number of things they both agree on. And those are just the consequences for people in Britain who don't care about Northern Ireland. There is also the small matter of the fact that you basically blow a massive hole in the Northern Irish peace process. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, please click the like button and subscribe. And if you'd like to support the channel further, you can join for memberships. Thanks for watching. And until next time, I'll see you later.